They called it the silence that sang. In 1793, under a crimson sky, the people of Red Hollow stood together, faced the moon, and ended themselves, every man, woman, and child. No screams, no violence. Just a song that no outsider could remember, and a city that never truly died. Okay, let's get started now. The song without a singer. There are places on the map where ink refuses to stay. Red Hollow was one such place, nestled deep in the Carpathian hinterlands. Its name had been etched and erased from record more times than any official dared admit. What little remained were whispers of music heard beneath the earth, of a town that sang itself to death. In 1947, a historian named Marek Duval stumbled upon a page, just one, torn, brittle, and faintly stained with something brown that might have been blood. It was wedged between forgotten folios in the basement of the Vienna University archives. No date, no title, only a heading written in Old Church Slavonic, the Litany of Red Hollow, last sung upon the moon's bloody eye. Beneath that, a phrase, "Let not the occult hear, lest the voice never leave." Duval was intrigued. He wasn't superstitious. He'd documented war, famine, mass hallucinations. But this felt different. He copied the phrase, brought it home. That night, he dreamt of a village in rows, people in robes, hands clasped, mouths agape, but no sound. And in the sky, a red moon, so large it filled half the horizon. He woke with blood dripping from his ears. Digging deeper, he found the name Red Hollow mentioned in a censored Habsburg ledger. Total loss of population due to spontaneous collective act. The sentence ended there. Duval searched for records, testimonies, survivors. He found only one. A soldier named Franz Adler, who had deserted his post the same week Red Hollow vanished. Franz's account, dictated at an asylum in 1794, was barely coherent, but one line chilled Duval to his core. They didn't die screaming, they died singing. And when they looked at me, I remembered the words, and I almost joined. Duval noted that Adler had no tongue when this was recorded. It had been cut out by himself. No one knew why. The further Duval searched, the more the pattern emerged. Broken journals, half-burned sheet music, whispers in dialects no longer spoken, all traced back to the same place, Red Hollow. Yet no map marked its existence. No grave marked its people, and no one who listened to the song ever remembered how it ended. But always, they began to hum. And Marek Duval, he began to hear it too. First in the wind, then in his dreams, then in his own voice. A song with no words, a harmony that called his name. The voice behind the walls in the weeks that followed. Marek Duval became obsessed. His home, once tidy and quiet, turned into a nest of ink, parchment, and string threads connecting fragmented mentions of Red Hollow across lost centuries and forbidden margins. He found one chilling reference buried in the appendix of a condemned hymn, banned by the Vatican in 1611, a short footnote, scrawled in Latin by a nameless monk, read, Caviti litanium sanguinis, in fine non-caneto vox, ipsa can. Marek did not sleep that night. He began hearing faint music, not melodic, not loud but ever-present, like a distant choir humming behind a wall. He tore through his flats searching for a source, the pipes, the radio, his own breath, but it never stopped. And then, one night, it answered. While reviewing Franz Adler's fragmented testimony, Marek recited a single phrase out loud phonetically, without knowing its meaning. The moment the syllables left his mouth, the lights flickered. Books slid from the shelves, and something in the dark whispered back, not in echo, but in perfect harmony. He froze. "You have heard the first bar," the voice breathed. "Now you must sing to forget." Marek tried to leave Vienna, tried to board a train, but every route was delayed, blocked, closed, for repair. When he finally managed to bribe his way aboard a coal transport, it derailed an hour. Outside, no casualties, but the engineer swore he saw a figure standing on the tracks, robed, arms outstretched, mouth open wide. Marek returned to the city, but it was not the same city. People moved in strange rhythms. Shopkeepers hummed unconsciously. Children whispered old Slavic rhymes no one had taught them. And in his dreams, he stood among them, in rose barefoot heads, tilted skyward beneath a red moon. They did not sing with voices. They became the song. He awoke one night with dried blood around his mouth and a phrase etched into his mirror. The litany begins when memory fails. Marek didn't remember writing it, but he understood it, because something inside him had begun to forget names, dates, even the sound of his own voice. He stood before the mirror and whispered, and for the first time, he heard someone else answer. "It remembers you. The map you can't read, only here among Marek Duval's growing collection of half-burnt documents and forbidden hymns." One item stood out not because it was old or rare, but because it made no sense. It was a page of pure notational lyrics. No clefs, no composer. The notes seemed scattered, illogical, but when Marek played them on his dusty upright piano, he felt a shiver down his spine. Not fear, but recognition, as if his hands were playing something older than memory, older than music itself. He recorded the melody, played it again slow the second time. He began to weep, not because it was sad, but because he suddenly remembered a place he had never been, a river that bled upward, and a village hidden behind soundless bells. He hadn't found a song. He had found a map written, not in geography, but in tonal sequence. And each note was a step, each chord a direction. Desperate for validation, Merrick consulted a reclusive musicologist named Dr. Hugh Kranz, known for decoding cryptic sonic artifacts. When Kranz heard the tune, he fell silent. He played it again, slower, then began sketching something, not a stave, not a diagram, but a path, a spiral, ending in a cross. When Merrick asked what it meant, Kranz replied, "It's not music. It's a summoning. You didn't play it, you opened it." That night Kranz sealed his windows, unplugged every device in his home, and never touched an instrument again. 3 days later he was found in his study dead, with a tuning fork embedded in his throat. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. On the wall, written in chalk, Red Hollow calls, "I won't be the voice." But Merrick couldn't stop. He played the melody one final time, this time with eyes closed. The world changed. His apartment no longer felt like Vienna. The walls pulsed with faint pressure. Shadows lingered longer than they should, and from the ceiling a drop of red dew landed on his temple. He opened his eyes, and outside his window, the moon had turned a dull, bruised crimson. The blood moon wasn't due for another 3 months, unless he wasn't where he thought anymore, or when. That night Merrick wrote only one sentence in his journal. "I hear their footsteps now, and they are walking in rhythm." The valley where sound sleeps, Merrick Duval departed Vienna in silence. No note left behind, no call to friends or family. He simply packed a coat, a recorder, and the cryptic melody. He took only Buckroad's instinct guiding each turn. He claimed later, in the one surviving audio log, that the air hummed in pitch, and whenever he followed the hum's crescendo, the trees leaned inward, as if ushering him closer. He drove until roads became gravel, then mud, then moss, until signs bore no words, just spirals, until the sky dimmed, though the sun had not yet set. And then he saw it, the valley, Red Hollow, but no map had ever shown this place. It did not appear in satellite data, no elevation records, no postal codes, just a low, mist-drenched basin, still and silent, a place where birds refused to sing, where even the wind walked on tiptoe. The town was intact. Houses stood, windows blinked darkly, doors remained ajar, but not a single human stirred, not a breath. Merrick walked the cobbled streets, shoes muffled by moss. He noticed no decano rot, no vines reclaiming wood, as if time had stepped aside, or been asked to leave. And then he heard it, not aloud, not external, inside his skull. A chord for notes, the same as the beginning of the melody, except now they weren't notes, they were directions. Left at the split road, past the dry well, toward the chapel. His feet moved without thought. The chapel was black stone, sunken and breathless. No cross, no god, only an altar carved with faces, mouths agape. He stepped inside and saw them, 21 chairs, each with a robe, each with a candle, each with a recording device, antique and dustless, and at a front a podium, a scroll, a baton, a conductor's stage, for a choir that sang itself to death. Merrick approached the altar. Upon it a leather-bound book pulsed faintly as if something inside it still beat. He opened it. Every page was blank, until he hummed the melody. Then ink spilled like veins. Names, dates, instructions, ritual, and at the bottom of the final page, "Sing not to awaken. Sing to remember what must remain forgotten." Behind him, the chairs creaked, but he was alone. Until he wasn't. The one who never sang, the altar's book now alive with ink, held more than ritual. It held names. Names Merrick recognized, though he did not know why. One in particular stopped his breath. Aliska Duval, a name written in crimson, not black, and beneath it, the one who would not sing. The final dissonance. He whispered her name aloud, and for the first time since entering Red Hollow, the chapel responded. A single candle lit itself, then another, then all 21. But Merrick was not cold. He was no longer even sure he was breathing. Footsteps echoed from the choir stalls. Slow, deliberate, he turned and saw no one. Only the robes, empty, but now upright, as if filled with a memory of flesh. Each robe stepped forward, no feet visible, aligning before the altar. They did not speak. They did not look. But Merrick could hear their melody forming not through his ears, but from inside his bones. He stumbled backward, and one robe turned, raised an invisible arm, pointed toward the far wall of the chapel, where something had been painted over in white chalk. Merrick approached. He brushed the chalk with his hand, and saw beneath it a mural, a depiction of Aliska, his great-grandmother, though he'd never known her, Her mouth was sewn shut with thread made of gold. Around her head a halo of spirals. And behind her, the blood moony tore the chalk away, revealing more detail. At her feet the people of Red Hollow, all kneeling, mouths open wide in song. And behind them a door, blacker than the night, framed by red script. A door that did not exist in the chapel. But as Merrick turned around, he saw it. It was now there, where the wall had been. A door of pure sound, shimmering like heat above asphalt. He didn't open it. He only listened, and through it came a voice, a woman's voice. "I did not sing, Merrick, but now you must." The candles dimmed, the robes dropped, the chapel went silent, and behind Merrick, a single note played itself on the ancient organ, not pressed by hands, but by something that remembered them. Part 6. The door that opened inward. Merrick Duval stood before the door that was not built but sung into being, a shimmer of vibrating air shaped like an arch, framed by silence so dense it hurt. He reached out, not to touch, but to listen, and it listened back. Behind it the melody stirred not music, but the memory of an intention once buried, now awake. The voice of Aliska returned, this time in harmony, layers upon layers of herself, stretched across generations. "We sealed it with song, Merrick, but silence is breaking." He stepped through, and the world unmade itself. Not in fire, not in light, but in soundlessness. He was no longer in Red Hollow, nor in any place at new time. He stood in a void of spirals, corridors shaped like cochlears, walls made of vibrating pitch, ground soft like skin, ceiling low like breath. There were others here, faceless, formless, moving in slow procession, as if orbiting a memory. One turned to him and sang, but it was not melody, it was history. Merrick saw it all, flashes of the first rite, centuries ago, when a plague swept the eastern provinces and Red Hollow, untouched, was visited by strangers in white robes, bearing no offerings, only voices. They taught the villagers a hymn, a harmony so perfect it could bind what should never wake. But the price was blood and agreement. Every voice must join, or the door would not stay shut. And so, when one woman refused Aliska, they silenced her, not in cruelty, in necessity. They bound her voice with golden thread, and she became the seal, the dissonance that completes the chord. Now, something had changed. Her line had weakened, because someone, Merrick, had sung the first bars again. The melody was waking, and so was what lay behind it. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed. The void pulsed, and from above descended a single spiral made of bone, blood, and breath. A mouth opened in its center, and from it a voice he had never heard, but had always known. "Who speaks in my sleep?" Merrick tried to answer, but he no longer had a voice, only the melody, and it poured from him, unbidden, not to summon, not to escape, but to choose. Part 7. The hymn that chooses its singer. The spiral of bone hovered above Merrick like a god made of breath. It had no eyes, no face, yet he felt it watching not his body, but his blood, his ancestry, the melody laced in his marrow. And then it spoke again. "Your tongue carries the thread. Do you sing by will or by inheritance?" Merrick could not answer. His throat trembled, filled with notes he had never learned but somehow knew. Each blink felt like a measure of time folding. He dropped to his knees. Then someone stepped beside him, bare feet, thin legs, a woman wrapped in a gown of candlelight, Aliska. But she was no ghost. She was memory, anchored to this place not by chains, but by sacrifice. Her mouth still sewn shut, yet her presence thundered. She knelt, touched Merrick's chest, and from her fingertips light flowed, not warm, but heavy, like the weight of 1,000 unspoken songs. Suddenly he could hear her voice, not with ears, but inside the folds of his mind. "The seal breaks because you remembered me. But memory is not enough to hold the dark. You must finish what I refused." The spiral above them vibrated, displeased, impatient. Merrick stood weakly. He looked toward it not as a man, but as the last verse of a dying choir, and he sang, not in language, but in grief. The melody erupted from him like blood from a wound. It rose into the void. The faceless processional around him turned, halted, and began to hum. Together, they formed the 21st chord, the one never written, never spoken, the one that could close the gate, or open it forever. Aliska stood behind him now, her mouth unsewn, open not in scream, but in harmony. She joined him, and with her voice returned, the void shook. The spiral screamed not in pain, but in birth, because the melody had never been a seal. It had been a womb, and Merrick had just sung the crowning note. Part 8. The birth of the unheard. The spiral collapsed, not with sound but with absence, a tearing silence that shattered every concept of space, time, memory. Merrick Duval collapsed with it, his scream swallowed before it left his lips. Around him the void curled inward, unraveling like a violin string cut mid-note. From that unraveling came the shape, the child of the choir, not born of flesh, born of silence kept too long. Its form was not fixed. One moment a child, the next a mouth, the next a song given shape. It pulsed with rhythm, skin stitched from frequencies Marek could no longer identify. But it looked at him, yes. It looked, and somehow, he knew it remembered him before he was born. The entity stepped forward. Its every movement was a rhythm, not walk. Behind it, the choir rose 21 forms, robes that were no longer empty, faces hidden by veils made of tone, and Marek understood. He hadn't finished the song. He had reset it. He had brought the choir back to their final verse. But this time, there would be no sacrifice. Only transformation. Eliska was no longer beside him. She stood within the circle now, lips parted, voice radiant, but her eyes. "You were meant to silence the song, Marek," she said, in the language of thought, "not conduct its return." Marek tried to stop it. He clutched his chest, tried to unsing what had been sung. But the song no longer needed him. It sang itself, and the child-born note lifted its arms and sang a single tone. Just one. It rippled across realities, across Red Hollow, across time. And suddenly, every recording device Marek had ever used shattered. Back in Vienna, his notes burned. Every map that had once shown Red Hollow, even those in memory. But one thing remained. The song. People would begin to hum it. In alleys, in dreams, in churches. Even those who had never heard of Red Hollow would find themselves lost in a melody they could unplace. Because the child was not a god. It was an invitation. Part 9. Echoes in the living. Not in the chapel, not in Red Hollow, but in his flat in Vienna, slumped at his desk, as if he had never left. The piano was untouched. His books in place. The melody sheets burned to ash in the trash bin. Had it all been a vision? He staggered to the mirror. His face was pale, drawn but not aged, until he looked into his own eyes. And there, in the reflection, stood Eliska behind him. Just for a second, her mouth open. Marek turned on the radio, desperate for sound, something normal. But what played chilled his blood. A children's choir, singing in harmony, a melody he didn't teach them. His melody. He changed the station. Same tune, a funeral broadcast. Same tune. He checked the date. Exactly 222 years since the Red Hollow event. The blood moon was that night. He rushed to his recordings, trying to capture the pattern again, to find a way to reverse it. But the more he listened, the more he forgot. Notes blurred, time distorted. His voice trembled when he spoke. In his final journal entry, found after his death, he wrote, "It is not a song anymore. It's a structure, a design. It's being built through us. We are singing it even when we sleep. The child walks among us, in tempo. And when the harmony is full, the door will not open again, because the world itself will be the door." Reports followed. Nurses humming in sync while patients flatlined. A child in Prague sketching spirals in blood during nap time. A cathedral in Bruges resonating at 432 Hz until its stained glass shattered during Mass. Each event shared one trait. No one remembered it clearly, as if the memory had been over. By music, Marek disappeared soon after. Some say he walked into the Danube during the eclipse, murmuring the final line of the litany. Others say he never existed at all. But across Europe, a pattern emerged. Certain melodies were banned. Choirs dissolved. Governments silenced broadcasts without explanation, because someone, somewhere, had begun to conduct. Part 10. The song without end. It began in whispers. In sleepwalkers humming lullabies in languages they never learned. In orchestras across continents losing control of their instruments mid-performance. In churches where choirs refused to stop. Even after service had ended, the song had returned. But not as melody, as instruction. Some tried to resist, destroy the notes, burn the records, ban certain frequencies. But the song was no longer just sound. It was remembered now, etched into the collective hum beneath thought. The tune hummed by the unborn in their mother's womb. The pulse of breath in the dying. And in the skies above, the blood moon returned. Brighter, closer. Its light no longer cast shadows. It devoured them. Those attuned to the melody began gathering uninvited, unannounced. In fields, in ruins, in train stations at midnight. They stood still and sang. Every tongue, every pitch, unified by something deeper than culture or language. Across the world, the same lyricless hymn. A final litany. And when the final verse came, they vanished. No blood, just clothing, instruments, recording devices, each filled with silence, so total it could be measured in weight. One final broadcast was found on a pirate signal out of Belarus. A woman's voice, soft.com/familiar. We sang not to summon, not to escape, but to remember. And in remembering, we became the song itself. Then static, then nothing. Gone. The valley now nothing but collapsed stone, grown over with trees that seem to hum when wind passes through. The chapel, only ruins, no door, no altar. But sometimes, if you walk the moss-covered paths in winter, you'll find 21 chairs, facing the spot where the moon touches the earth just right. and you'll feel it, that urge to sing, even if you don't know why. So if tonight the air feels heavier, if your breath moves in rhythm you didn't intend, if a melody lives beneath your heartbeat, you were never just hearing it, you were part of it all along. The final sacrifice was not the end, it was the first note of the next world. And if you've listened this far, perhaps a part of the song now lives in you too. Maybe tonight, when the wind passes through your window, you'll hear it. Not a scream, not a voice, but a no unfinished, waiting for you to sing. If this story whispered to something deep inside, if it stirred a question that won't go away, then leave a like, share this with another seeker, and subscribe to the channel. We have so many more secrets to uncover together. The forgotten, the forbidden, the almost true. My name fades here, but the melody continues. In you, see you in the next descent.